afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Wired for Logic podcast. I've got my guest today, Nicole Dery, and she's with Allelo Design. Did I get that right?
You did.
Right. Awesome. So, Nicole, can you share a little bit about yourself and what you guys do? And it's a very interesting name. I'd like to hear a little bit more about that.
Sure, happy to. So, I am by training an applied anthropologist and a design researcher and have been pretty much my whole career. Started Allelo about 3.5 years ago, and we are a custom front end digital design studio. And we do a lot of fractional chief design officer work, which is essentially strategic advisory consulting type of work. The name Allelo, it comes from the Greek word that means to be in symbiotic relationship. And we chose that name because we very strongly believe in the idea that we are in symbiotic relationship with our clients, co-creating the tools that we're designing or helping them design, and also that we're in symbiotic relationship with the people for whom we are designing, the users. Our job and responsibility to make sure that we are meeting the needs of the users. So it reminds us to pay attention to that because it's right there in our name.
Yeah, that's interesting. I enjoy the Greek culture very much. I had a good friend of mine from high school, known her like 25 years or so. And when I first met her, she would tell me about how she went to Greece every year around her birthday. And I was like, that's interesting, go back and, visit the homeland and whatnot. And she has relatives over there and everything. And she would always talk about how amazing Greece was. Oh, you totally got to come visit sometime. Like, yeah, yeah, yeah. Everyone says their homeland is amazing. Is it really? I don't know. I've never been there. And so then finally, fast forward a number of years, I had an opportunity to go with her when she was going over there, and got to visit Athens and some of the neighboring islands, Mykonos and Santorini, and man, just fell in love. I don't know how much lamb I ate there, but I probably ate lamb for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, just like nonstop. And I've never been a tomato fan before, but when I was over there, one of their main salads is like the village salad, which is like chopped up tomato and feta and I think cucumbers and of course olive oil dressing and whatnot. And it was just the most amazing tomatoes I've ever had. Must be the soil over there. Of course, they grow wine and all that kind of stuff too, but it's all very,
Yes.
very interesting. And I got to take a trip back. My wife and I actually got married over there at Santorini. So we have that holds a very special place in our heart. But that's cool. So how did you get into the design space and are you just doing like it mentions, UX on your website. Do you guys do branding or marketing or anything like that or just the UX design?
We primarily focus on UX and product design. We do have some partners that we work very closely with on branding projects. Many times we'll be involved in a project that has multiple components to it. So there may be a brand reconsideration or a development or creation for a new product that's being designed. And so we often partner on things like that. Sometimes our clients have their own development teams and sometimes they don't. So we also sometimes partner with engineering partners on the development of the designs that we're creating. So it just depends on the project and the needs of the project. But we do have quite a bit of experience doing research for branding partners that we work with as well as for product design itself.
When you say product, is it just software front end product or is it like any physical product or what do you mean by product exactly?
Yeah, Allelo primarily focuses on front end custom digital design.
Okay.
So what that means is digital products, and they tend to be custom is an important component of that. They tend to be products that are quite complex. They have complex workflows. They aren't sort of something you can just, and there are a lot of tools out there now that allow you to design an app really quickly with AI, for example. But these are tools that are used for really complex processes. So, for example, to complete an energy audit and then crunch the numbers to make recommendations about what kinds of improvements should be made to increase the energy efficiency of a building. Or you mentioned someone that you spoke with on a previous podcast was doing audits for companies looking at their carbon emissions, which is a very complex process. Software that assists them in that might be custom designed, custom fit to that purpose. That's the kind of thing we help work on.
Okay. It was interesting when I was talking with him about like, how do you do this? He's like, oh yeah, it's all in a spreadsheet. I was like, it's all in a spreadsheet, man. That sounds really cumbersome. Because in my head, I'm thinking more of what you're talking about, where it's some kind of neat and clean UI that walks you through like, it's okay, now plug this information in, I'll plug that information in. And aggregates all that information together, calculates and spits something out. It's like an end report that you can submit to, compliance documentation or whatever. He was talking about they use spreadsheets because they have to be able to determine who entered what piece of information. So
Mhm.
Bill entered this information here, Jane entered this information over here, and that person could potentially be held accountable if they go to submit this report and an auditor, because they do attestation and they do auditing. The same company can't do both for obvious reasons, but he was explaining if the auditors come in and they check the work, they need to be able to pin it on somebody if the information is fraudulent or inaccurate.
Uh-huh.
So, do you guys run into those kind of questions when it sounds like you're kind of in a sense semi-automating or making the workflow a lot smoother with how you're doing it versus how they're doing it. You get
Yep.
questions about that at all?
We are often building things that replace what we would call more manual input processes. So that's an example where a bunch of people are inputting information into a spreadsheet, and spreadsheets are great. They're used for things very effectively in many contexts. So I'm not bashing spreadsheets by any means.
Right.
And there is often, especially when you have an enterprise organization, for example, that's very large and many people are entering information, there's an opportunity sometimes to automate those processes, make them a little bit smoother. And we do usually have the ability to design for various levels of checking on things or attributing information to people who entered it. You can think about a simple example would be like your Google Docs, right? There's a history in that application that notes who is doing what within each document iteration. So you can build things like that into the software, and into the workflows, just depending on the needs of the people who are using it.
Almost like an audit trail.
We do like to have trails so that we know what's happening with these products as they are developed over time, for sure. And the design component is really we're focused on the front end. So in the front end considerations, what we're really wanting to make sure that we're doing is enabling the people using the tool to do their work more effectively, more accurately, with more precision, faster. Kind
Hmm.
of depends on the context of what kind of goals they're looking to achieve. It might also mean that we're looking to expand access to that workflow, like more people are able to engage in it or get information from it. So there's lots of reasons why you might want to have a tool that's sort of custom designed to fit a particular purpose like that.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Like on the small side, what's like maybe an example of one of the smaller projects you guys have done versus what's an example of one of the larger projects you've done, and how quickly and effectively were you guys able to do it, or were there a lot of frustrations throughout the process? Explain kind of how that works from like getting the client, starting the project to working through it and then completing it.
Sure. So we have a somewhat of a consistent approach. Normally, what happens is in the very beginning of a project, we do some discovery work. And that discovery is aimed at understanding a couple of things. What are the goals of the organization? What's the client trying to achieve? Usually, there is a business goal associated with whatever it is we're designing. In addition to sometimes there's like an innovation goal or some other types of goals that might be relevant. If they're building a tool for their internal use, there might be like a retention goal for their employees to have a better work experience. So those are some of the goals that you might see. Increased revenue if you're looking at a product that's going to be used externally. So we first try to understand the client and their needs.
Right.
That's really, really important. And we do that through a bunch of different mechanisms. Like usually we try to understand the tools that they're currently using. We also do stakeholder engagement. So we try to understand who's involved in both the project and whoever's going to ultimately be using the tool. And then if there's a customer involved, there's a customer discovery process where we try to understand like who's the target market, what are they looking to achieve, what is the needs of that market or those users. And then all that discovery feeds into us designing a project plan that's pretty customized, but usually has some similar steps to it. So the steps normally involve creating some kind of concept if no product currently exists. And that concept is something that it's not built out. You can think of it as a very early prototype. It
Right.
doesn't have much build behind it, but it's enough for people to react to. So then we would share that with the people who are going to be using the tool, the people who are investing in building the tool, and the people who are actually going to be building the tool, like the people who actually have to do the work of writing the code. And then we would use the input from their reactions to create the next iteration of designs.
Okay.
And then we would test those in a much more formal way, normally with usability testing of some kind. So that's where users are actually walking through every screen, looking at what the task they're trying to accomplish is, whether or not they get to the output they're looking for, whether we need to change language or move icons or shift visuals or change the format and layout of something. All of that gets determined and tested. And then once it's tested, we'll build a formal, finalized design that gets handed off to whoever is writing the code to build the thing. And so
Okay.
that's generally how it works. There's a couple of things that are really important that I would love to share about this, which is that when we're thinking about prototyping and concepting, what we call it in the design space, is super important for us to do that early and fast and get ideas out there, because we can waste a lot of time designing details that are not relevant or useful.
Right.
So we're really big believers in fast, quick, get something in people's hands to help them understand where the solution is going.
Yeah, no, that makes
And then,
sense.
yeah.
And make sure that you're aligned with the client. They may say, "Yeah, we need X, Y, and Z," and you're like, "Oh, okay, yeah, we know how to do that." And you design X, Y, or Z, and they're like, "No, that's not what we need at all. We actually need this other thing." And you're like, "Well, that's totally not what you said, but cool. I'll start from scratch again."
Well, and if we do that in a really low cost, low risk way, then we can get faster to the place where we actually need to be.
Yep, that makes sense. So, yeah, kind of like an architect, an architect needs a lot of information to make sure that when they start down the road of design, that they're moving in the right direction and the visions are aligned as to what the end result should look like. And then,
Yes.
do you guys partner with, because it's interesting on a lot of people, I think, might envision an app or an interface or whatever that the same company designs all of that. It coming from an IT background, I know that the front end versus the code on the back end, those are two different animals. And somebody that may be good at designing the front end may not know how to design the back end, or somebody that's good at designing the back end most likely doesn't know how to design a good front end. They can probably make it happen, but it's not going to flow and look and feel like a modern interface. It's going to be kind of clunky, more of like an engineer's feel. And we noticed that from we have a phone system that we use, and it's been around for a little bit. It's got a lot of functionality, but the
Mhm.
UI is just horrible. It's horrible.
Mhm.
And what's weird about it is the company, when they produce their marketing material looks amazing. Like they really have a good designer doing all their marketing material. It's very crisp and fresh, and it's very eye-catching. And then you get in and use the system and you're like, this is like, hello, 1999 called. They say they want their interface back. But it's interesting to see that differentiation between the two and know that there are two different skill sets to design front end versus back end. How did you get into it in the first place?
Yes, there's a huge need also for designers, really skilled systems thinking designers. They understand very clearly what the back end folks are doing so that they can design with that in mind, those limitations that might exist on the engineering side in mind, and so that the transition, the handoff between the design and the build is seamless, which is a skill set in and of itself. Being able to navigate that translation, it's a translator kind of role. You can't just like throw it over the fence, you know? You need that connectivity between the front and the back to be as seamless as possible and also clearly communicated. And then we do QA. There is QA. So once something has been built, the designers, at least that we work with, will usually go back and make sure that the design came to life in a way that was what was intended. And that's tested as well, and it's tested for functionality and all that too. You asked two questions I didn't answer yet. One about small projects, which I will speak to, and then also how we get into this. I personally have been in design my whole career. I started out with a small agency that did product design for physical products, and that was primarily surgical instruments. So I watched a lot of surgeries. as a researcher, and we would do very detailed analysis of how many times a tool was picked up or put down, ways in which a tool was used, etc. And then that information would be given to industrial designers who were creating the new version of the tool or a new tool that didn't exist yet. So that's how I started. And then I got into the digital space. I also worked in organizational design for many years. And then I got into the digital space when I went to work for Ernst& Young, which is a Big Four consulting firm. And I joined a studio that focused on digital products. So that's how I got into this space. It's pretty much there's a ton of consistency in the way that we approach design, no matter whether we're designing for organizational effectiveness, a digital product, or a physical product. The approach and the underlying theoretical way we think about design is very similar. And the research that we do, which is my expertise, we use the same methods to discover things. So we have a methodological consistency. What's different is the technical skills. Like the technical skills of doing front-end custom UX design are very different than the technical skills of for example, like building a culture inside of an organization. So there's some consistency and some differences depending on
Right.
what you're designing. And you asked about a small project. I just wanted to note that we often and increasingly more and more, because we'll probably talk about the future of the industry in this conversation, we more and more are doing strategic direction type of work where we're brought into an organization that has some designers already on staff that may have a small team or a set of designers who are newer in their careers. And what they're really looking for is some systems thinking about how to make sure that the design processes and structures that they're putting in place are enabling them to achieve their business outcomes. And sometimes that involves some mentoring of designers and so on.
Yeah.
So we've been doing small projects like that quite a bit
Like
lately.
a transfer of knowledge, like your years of experience, transfer that to some of the younger blood in that organization. Say, hey, this is, in all my years of experience, I learned that this is the way you approach design and implementation and all that kind of stuff. I like too how you said that the communication between the front end and the back and how important that is. It's kind of like if you're building a house and the client's like, hey, I want this big open living room all the way through to the kitchen. And it's like, well, the architect can easily design that. I mean, you just put some lines and walls and this and that. But now the structural engineer has to come in and figure out if we don't have a wall between the living room and the kitchen, what's going to bear that load for the roof or the second story or whatever it is. You're going to have to put some steel beams in there. And how does the steel beam need to be rated? How big does it need to be? What thickness? Like the columns that are supporting the steel beam, like all of that stuff has to be figured out just to give it that look and feel. So the look and feel for the architect is maybe the easier part because it comes naturally to them, but then the engineer has to figure out how to make that all function in the real world beyond the 3D model.
And the good architects, and this would be true for the good designers, they are also thinking about the limitation that we call them beautiful constraints. The creative limitations that are imposed by all kinds of constraints. They might be budget constraints, they might be technical constraints, they might be related to existing technology stacks within an organization. So there might already be a system in place that whatever we're creating has to plug into. So there's an existing technology environment constraint there that has to be considered. So the designer will take all of that into account. And there are also constraints that users present. They may not have the knowledge or capability to engage with certain kinds of interface types or certain kinds of tools. And therefore, there's a big onboarding requirement if they don't have that. So there's lots of ways that designers have to think about what's realistic, not just what they could make.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you have a client that comes to you and says, we want to design this, UI for this product, but we don't have somebody to do the back end. Do you guys have partners you work with? Do you source those? How does that look like?
We do. We're huge believers and benefactors of partnerships. So we partner with folks who are brilliant engineers. We have some partnerships with some who have particular expertise in particular areas. So that's really valuable. We also partner with people who have branding expertise if there's a need to bring that into the equation. So yes, we have partners we work with and we're very grateful for those. Also, clients will also have their own own partners sometimes. We can work with them as well, and we can sort of create whatever's needed in that RACI, if you will, that like chart that identifies who's responsible for what and who's informed.
Yeah.
We can build that however is going to best suit the needs of the project.
Interesting. We do a lot of work on the IT side of things. We do a lot of work for franchisors and assisting
Mm,
their franchisees during new build outs and things like that. So they'll plug us in to a say, oh, this is franchisee XYZ for this and that location. Like there's some Massage Heights as a client of ours, and they're doing a brand transition. They're switching from Massage Heights to Heights Wellness Retreat. They're adding additional modalities like cryo and a couple other ones. But they in doing that, there was a lot of design work up front in terms of how the retreat was going to look. And then they did a lot of research and validating of different vendors. I'd say validating, but it wasn't really fully validated, the different audio vendors, and the one they went with is probably the best fit for what they're wanting to do. So it wasn't that it was a bad choice, but they went into it without fully understanding the technology requirements behind it. And we weren't involved till the very end. They were like, we're looking at these couple of vendors. And I said, well, I think this because of this, pros and cons, and kind of listed those out. And they were like, oh, okay, we're going to go with this one. It's like, all right, cool. And we can probably end up, when I was talking with them, they don't have any. That was the interesting thing to me. Their system's very complex, and it has a lot of features and functionality allowing you to play different streams in different rooms. So you can have each person getting massage can have a different music experience, which is really cool.
sure.
But the technology in order to make that work is exponentially more complicated than what they were doing before. Before it's just like one music player and then just speakers in each one of the rooms and call it a day. Right now it's like iPads with apps to control the audio player in that room, and then it has to use a certain type of streaming over the network and all this kind of stuff. But after we're getting into it, when this kind of thrust onto our plate, trying to reverse engineer how this system works, because even the people making it didn't fully understand it. Like they don't, on the hardware side of things, just install the app and it streams over the network. It's like, no, that's not how that works. You don't just install an app and it streams. I know there's more to it. I know there is. So getting into it and spent hours and days figuring it all out because the documentation is very limited. But then
Yeah.
come to find out in talking with them, they don't have any hardware partners. They're based in the UK, and I don't know if they have any hardware partners there, but they don't have any hardware partners here in the US. So like when it comes to implementation, it's kind of the same thing. They sell it to like a hotel chain or to a, health and wellness chain or whoever. And it's like, okay, here's a software, charge you XYZ per month for each location. Now figure out how to make it do what you want it to do. That's not a good way to approach it. Why don't you sell it and then connect us with them as your partner? That's where the partnerships come in, right? And then we can
Yeah.
help them implement it. That way you guys look like rock stars and your system works the way it's intended, instead of the client getting irritated and saying, oh, you sold us a bag of goods and it didn't do what we wanted it to do. So yeah,
Yeah.
partnerships are incredibly important, and making sure you have the right partners, especially designing the back end, making sure that the vision that you're creating for the client comes to fruition.
Yes. 100%. No, and we work with those partners very closely. Like they're essentially just an extension of our team.
Right.
And that's really critical because just as you're saying, and you said this really beautifully, there is an absolute need for us to deliver on all these different pieces of things in a way that the customer experience is it invisible to the customer experience. The customer doesn't care. If the person walking in to get that massage, they don't care if you have, a separate partner for your audio visual than you do for your bookkeeping system. They want to be able to go in, get their massage, have a beautiful massage with a great, amazing soundscape, and then pay their nice Apple Pay wallet, swipe it really quickly and get out the door experience. All those pieces have to be connected from the business's point of view, but from the customer's point of view, it needs to feel seamless and great.
Yep. That's said beautifully. And I love how you use the word soundscape, because I think that's actually what they call the music tracks in their app, or soundscapes. It's a very beautiful app. The UI is very nice. It
Yeah.
works great, but the technicalities of making it work in the back end are a lot more difficult than they make it out to be in the beginning. But I'm sure when you guys start designing things to the customer, they're like, oh, really easy. We just need to this thing that you fill out some fields and like next, and then it just does it. It's like, well, what is it doing? Well, it sends the data over there. It sends the data where? Where is it sending the data? What is the data doing? Where does the data live? Like, I need more information here. So that was part of when we were getting involved in this AI space. Is it's hard for me to disconnect. I have to know how things work. I want to
Yeah.
know, how does the front end connect with the back end? Once it's in the back end, where is it sending the information? How is it then processing that? And it's hard for me to disconnect because we're not going to be actually doing a lot of the intricate coding and things like that. We're going to be designing the solution for the client
Mm-hmm.
end to end, but the
Mm-hmm.
coding will have to actually have programmers do the coding. And it's hard for me to disconnect from that piece of it because I'm very used to getting down and into the thick of it and implementing. Like I was talking about the music solution. Like, I got in there, I kind of reverse engineered it, figure out how it all worked, and then created documentation for my technicians and for my install team. So they then knew, hey, once you guys get on site, this is how you set it up, this is how you use it. We're gonna have to train the client on how to use it because it's a little nuanced in the beginning, but yeah, it's interesting, all the different components and pieces that go into creating any kind of digital product. What made you interested in getting into the field in the first place of design? Like, what's your background prior to um, the surgical design and things like that?
I'm interested in people and how they interact with their environments. And that's my background's in applied anthropology, which is basically the study of people.
Okay.
And always been interested, always and always my whole career. I've studied essentially the way that people interact with their environment, and environment is sort of broadly defined. And that interaction often happens through tools. It's often mediated through tools. So if you think about your work life, we're recording this podcast right now on a tool that records podcasts. You contacted me on a tool that's designed for contacting people. Like, these are the ways in which the things that you do get done. So I'm just really interested in how we design those to be something that serves people and something that serves society at large too. Like, we're really interested in supporting and promoting the positive impact that the companies and clients that we work for have. And we can't do that without deeply understanding the way that people interact with these tools we're creating. And so that's really why that's what I've always been fascinated by people. I just like them.
Sorry, my screen kind of glitched out there for a second. How do you guys get in touch with potential clients? Is it mostly like referrals, or how do you guys build your book of business? That's always interesting to me too, because that's a big part of any business, is client acquisition, retention, growth, all those kinds of things.
Yes. Well, we are a relatively new organization. We've only been around a couple years, as I mentioned, and we are still figuring that out, to be 100% honest. Most of our business has come through our own networks or through referrals.
Okay.
So one of the ways that we like to build business is by doing great work. And we're kind of big believers that great work begets more great work. And we've seen that be effective. And there's a whole world out there of trying to figure out how to connect with the folks who need the kinds of things that we can provide well at the time when they need them. The timing is a real consideration. We have relationships that we build, and they stay in place for many, many years. And then there will be a moment when the need matches what we can provide and like matches our service offerings. But we haven't quite figured out how to connect right at the moment when somebody needs exactly what we have. So if you have an answer to that, please tell me.
Yep. Well, we do have, I know one of the new things that is being introduced and on the AI side of things is we have they call it a workspace. And it's been a challenge of ours too. So you're not on an island when it comes
Appreciate
to
that.
acquiring clients. I hear these stories about, company XYZ getting hacked, and it's like, well, how could we have gotten to that customer and helped advise them better prior to that happening? Or if it did happen underneath another MSP, how could we have gotten in touch with them and said, hey, there's a better way forward. We can help you guys and prevent this in the future.
Mhm.
But you're right, getting in contact at the time of need, that's a challenge. And we've tried a bunch of different marketing methods. We had a client called Abstract, not a client, I'm sorry. We had a client acquisition company called Abstract. We had another one called Arsenal that we used. And then the most recent one is Marketopia. And they're cold calling and emailing and things like that. And that works sometimes if you catch the person at the right time. Maybe a contract's coming up, or, like if you guys get a hold of somebody, they're like, oh, yeah, actually, we're just about to design this new digital product and you called at the right time. I mean, what are the odds of you connecting with somebody just at the right time? A lot of it is more relationships you put in place that pay
Yes.
off down the road. So I got a couple funny stories about that before I cycle back to the workspaces thing. So speaking of massage and Massage Heights, so if you look up where our office, it's an ironic story because at the end of the strip center is the Massage Heights here in Stone Oak. And that was the very first Massage Heights we ever had as a client. And I went to see my massage therapist, Sarah, for a number of years before we even had an opportunity to even get in with them. And in
Mhm.
talking with her, I came in one day for one of my sessions. I was going in, I think, like once a month or once every 2 weeks or something like that. Built a good friendship with her. We catch, hey, how are the kids? How's life? Blah,
Sure.
blah, blah. Then I came in one day and they were messing with the phones. They like picked the phone up and they're like, hello, hello, like messing with the connection. Walked in the session, I was like, what the hell's going on with the phones out there? And she's like, oh yeah, they've been messing up really bad. It's like, y'all need a new phone system then, because I mean, those phones look really old. And she's like, yeah, but your owner's kind of cheap and he's not going to want to drop like 5 grand on a new phone system. I was like, I don't blame him. I mean, nobody wants to drop 5 grand on a phone system. I said, hey, we actually do phones. Would you guys be open to trying our phones out? And she said, well, you can talk with the retreat director, which is essentially the manager. And so I walk out of my session and said, hey, can I see the manager? And of course, he freaked out. Oh my God, what's wrong? Is everything okay? Was it a good stay? Yeah, it's fine. I just want to talk with her about y'all's phones. And so she comes out and she's like, yeah, can I help you? And I explained we did phones, blah, blah, blah. She's like, well, I'll have to talk to the owner. Okay, cool. So she's like, I'll talk to the owner. I'll get back to you next time you're in here for your session. We can catch up over it. It's like, cool, sounds good. Next thing you know, she talks to the owner. The owner calls Sarah because the two of them knew each other for quite some time. Sarah had already been there like 5 or 6 years. And so she had built a good friendship
Mm.
with the owner. And so he calls her, he's like, oh, who the hell is this West guy? And she's like, oh, he comes in all the time. He owns an IT company and blah, blah, blah. All right, well, I'm going to give him a call then. So he calls me up and he's like, oh, this is Wayne Evans, Massage Heights. So I was like, oh, yes, sir. And I knew who Wayne Evans was because I had done some research on Massage Heights. Like, man, this is the co-founder of the company he's calling me. I'm like freaking out, like, yeah, yes, sir. How can I help you, sir? And like answering all his questions. Well, we'll give it a try. We'll see what you guys can do for us and blah, blah, blah. And so I went back. I had partners at the time. I started SE Tech back in 2000. So SE Tech's been around for quite a long time, but I had a couple other friends of mine who also had an IT company and they were kind of growing at a slow pace. I was kind of growing at a slow pace. We thought maybe if we merged together,
Mm.
owner minds could push the agenda forward faster. So we started a third company. We were funneling all the new business into the third company. We still kept the other two companies. And so I
Mhm.
went to them and I said, hey, I think this is a huge opportunity. And oh, okay, well, what is it? I was like, well, it's just one location right now and it's only 5 phones. I said, but I think this can get our foot in the door. The guy that owns this location owns 3 others and he's the co-founder of the company. So he's works at corporate and we may be able to get into corporate and do some of their support. And, it's all pie in the sky at this point in time. I'm just imagining where this could go.
Sure.
And two of the owners shot me down. They're like, thumbs down. It's going to be cost us like $2,000. And this is when we were just getting like $2,000 was a lot of money to us. And we're like, man, I don't know if we can swing this. I said, well, I think it's a great opportunity. I think it's a mistake not to move forward with this. They're like, no, we're not going to do it. It's just not going to be worth it. It's going to take us, 2 years to ROI and all this other nonsense. And I said, well, I believe in the opportunity. I'll buy the hardware myself and I'll go install it on my own time. So I took the chance on that. That was in like 2012, 2014-ish timeframe. Now you fast forward, we do support for like 80 out of the 110 Massage Heights for like MSP and IT type stuff. We're the mandated vendor for all of their tablets. We do support for corporate. We manage all their 365. So all those things that I was envisioning could possibly come through, I made a reality. And I remember when I first started going to see Sarah, I used to look at this space at the end of the strip center that was 2-story. And I thought to myself, how great it would be to have an office there, maybe one of these days. And now guess where our office is?
And that's where your office is?
Yep. It's at the
What a
other end of the
great
strip center in that
story.
2-story spot. It was a couple different clubs and bars. And incidentally, which I went to because I've always lived in the area for the last 10 or 15 years.
Yeah.
And then fast forward after the last bar closed, iCode, I don't know if you're familiar with that franchise. iCode came in and built the space out. And when I was just browsing LoopNet one night and I was like, oh, let's see some, rental spaces in the area. And it popped up and I was like, man, I was looking at the inside. I'm a big fan of grays and blacks and whites and things like that. The carpeting in here, the flooring, it's glass walls around the offices. I mean, everything was like if you asked me what I would want my office to look like, this is what I would want my office to look like. And then we just moved in and didn't have to do anything other than create a kitchen out of one of the rooms downstairs because there was no break room. So we had to create that. I'm not going to show up here and not be able to eat lunch. You need a refrigerator, dishwasher, sink, things like that. But we got all that designed and we had a nice grand opening party and it was fantastic. But it was interesting to see that relationship that I built with Sarah very early on. And it wasn't with the intent of having them as clients. It was just a friendship. And then the opportunity presented itself and I was there at the right time, like you were talking about, and I could offer them a service and that blossomed. And we also do all the build outs for them and stuff like that too. It's paid itself back 10,000 fold, 10,000 fold. And then
That's
that connected us to other franchises like the Gents Place and Glow Tanning. And so now we're doing all the builds for them. And it's just, yeah, it's incredible. That's the challenge that a lot of businesses have is we're kind of cheating going through the franchise side of things because it's very easy once you get in with the franchisor, then they just send you
mhm.
to all the new franchisees. They're out constantly marketing. They want more franchisees. Every time they secure a new franchisee, they're like, oh, hey, Wes, talk to them. Oh, hey, Wes, talk to them. So Heights Wellness Retreat has 3 more builds coming up between now and the end of the year. So that's 3 new clients for us that I didn't have to work to get. So that works very well. But outside of that, I have to admit, it's kind of hard. If we weren't getting
Yes.
handed on a silver platter, these new clients, it's not easy to connect with the right person in their time of need and be that go-to. So the workspaces that we're looking at, they're in beta right now, and I'll circle back with you on it once they go live.
Okay.
We're gonna be getting access to the beta, and essentially what it's going to allow us to do is it's going to integrate automated campaigns for email. It's going to
Mhm.
integrate automated ad campaigns on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. I don't know what other ones are going to add after that. And it's going to be able to capture the metrics and make adjustments. So the AI is going to be constantly monitoring those
Mhm.
campaigns to see how they're responding, both the email ones and the social media ones. And if they're not performing well, then it'll pause that campaign and it'll spin up another one. And so it keeps doing different iterations of it until it kind of dials it in to where you're getting the right leads at the right time and the right amount of them. Then once a lead books a call and stuff like that, it then automatically adds it to the built-in CRM. And
Uh-huh.
then you can, when you set up a meeting with the client, you can add almost like a note taker. You add the AI SDR to your call and it monitors the conversation and the call to help give you real-time feedback on whether you're answering the prospects' concerns, their pain points. Maybe you missed something. Hey, make sure you circle back on, XYZ, kind of like a little somebody talking to you in your ear, kind of giving you live feedback. So AI is incredible and I can't wait to see where it goes. Are you guys using a lot of AI in your field?
We are. Yes, that is incredible, and please do keep me informed. It sounds interesting. MarTech, like marketing technology, is a perfect space for leveraging AI. Also, I'm super fascinated. I've seen some things. I do try to keep abreast, although it's all changing so quickly all the time. It's hard to keep up. But I do try to pay attention to what some of the tools that are being developed are. And there are some really interesting AI capabilities that are being deployed to assess things like facial expressions. So, I mean, in the context of talking with a client and providing real-time guidance, it'd
Hmm.
be super interesting to include some like behavioral science components to that. Anyway, fascinating. It's a fascinating topic. We do use AI. There is AI built into many of the design tools that we use. And also we do work with clients on thinking about how they can leverage AI to their advantages based on their own systems that they have in place for design. So one thing that I think is really important to talk about when it comes to AI is that the partnership between the human and the machine needs to be robust. Figma, for example, is a tool that we often use to design things, and AI is integrated into that tool. So we can use those integrations very effectively to speed up our work. We can also use them to ideate. Like AI is a great brainstorming tool, so we
Yes.
can use it to about things like, oh, we want to solve for this, and these are our ideas about how to do it. But what are some other ideas that we haven't considered, for example? And what it is not yet capable of doing, and it's TBD whether it becomes capable of this, is it is not yet capable of thinking about and understanding deeply the context in which those design decisions are being made and how that connects to the business goals that we're looking to achieve, because design ultimately is a system that's part of other systems that help a business or an organization achieve specific outcomes. It is a results oriented endeavor.
For sure, and it's very nuanced too. I think that's where AI
Yeah.
still lacks capability is in the nuance of things.
Yes. Yes. And that's where the people partnership has to come in. Like that
Right.
strategic thinking has to be present, and the designer has to bring that to the table if they're going to leverage AI well.
Yeah, for sure. I was watching a video the other day. I don't know if you follow Dan Martell at all.
Mm-mm.
Very,
Should I?
very interesting. He came from basically nothing, and he's built, like, a multi-million-dollar empire. It's very interesting videos. He does a lot of videos on AI and other business-related things, like coaching type stuff. It's a lot of good information, but a lot of AI stuff. I think he launched, like, an AI agency recently, but it's interesting to see where AI is going and how I mean, even with Google, like, I don't know they were talking about a trend of the way that people are starting to search. So you think back like a year or 2 ago, imagine you have a house and you want a pool in your backyard. So you're gonna get online, you're gonna go to Google, and you're gonna say like, pool companies near me, right? And it's gonna give you, 10 or 15. It's got the little lunchbox section up at the top. It's got a couple there, maybe say, show me more or whatever. You start looking at ratings, like, okay, this one's got a couple stars, but it's only got 10 ratings. This one's got, you know, 50 ratings and it's got, 4.5. And so you're having to then aggregate all that information together and like put your own spreadsheet or presentation for yourself together, aggregating all that information. Then you got to read the reviews and you got to say, okay, let me go to the website. What are the price ranges? How long have they been in business? All those kind of things. You start researching. This is a pool is a lot of money. It's not like you're dropping $10. You're talking about tens of
Totally.
thousands of dollars, probably easily 50K at a minimum, maybe upwards of 150K. So you want to do your due diligence beforehand. Well, in order to do that effectively, it takes time. Or you go to ChatGPT and you say, hey, I own this XYZ house in this particular area. I'm looking for the top 3 pool companies in my area that can build a pool. Give me the reasons why you chose these 3 and pros and cons of each one and provide a couple reviews and ratings and blah, 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 blah. And then within seconds, it spits all that information out. And you're like, wow, that's impressive. That's how I think a lot of people are going to start searching for local businesses, going to be less on Google, or Google's going to have to change the way it presents itself. And some of that, if you turn on like some of the beta, like the Gemini stuff, it'll give you some AI results and things like that. But it's amazing to see what it can do in such a short period of time. And it'd take you hours probably to put all that information together.
Yes, yes, and there's a trust factor there, of course, that needs to be considered, and thinking about the builders of the AI and what types of incentives they have to provide you with what type of information is part of this picture, which is so fascinating too, because you mentioned we were talking about marketing tools and like bringing together the ability to reach out to businesses at a time when it makes sense for them. And one of the things that I'll be curious to see how it continues to evolve is AI results being provided in search, and how that ultimately, if it does, becomes monetized, and what type of advertising environment that creates, which is different than social media and different than traditional search. But it's like the Wild West because it hasn't been defined yet. What it means, and what it means for SEO considerations is also shifting and changing. So it's all really interesting developments that are underway, and AI's capabilities are so tremendous. They should be leveraged to make our lives and experiences better, in my view.
There's a lot of people that rail against AI as, oh, AI is gonna, take all these jobs and this and that. all the things that we want to do with AI, we want to make people's lives easier, make their jobs more efficient. If we could leverage it for the MSP side of things, it would allow us to get more clientele, which then in turn allows us to hire more technicians. So I would argue we're actually creating jobs. And this depends on
Mhm.
how you use it and what side of the camp you're on. But I think it can be used for a lot of good, and I think it can help bring more jobs to companies and help companies grow if it's used effectively.
Yeah, I agree, and I think the design of the AI is important in that. Like, how we design it, it matters, and what we design it to do and how we design it to be used and all of that is part of the equation. And I completely agree, it can be used for good, and we should use it for good.
Yep. Have you ever been having a conversation with ChatGPT and had it start hallucinating and giving you just weird?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. I've done an analysis with ChatGPT where I asked it to review a data set and then provide me with information from that data set. It gave me false information. I asked it to tell me where in the data set that information was, and it gave me a false identification tag. And then I went back to the data and checked that tag. Yes, it definitely can hallucinate, and that's part of the world we're in now. We have to think about its use and how we apply it, and also it can provide amazing, great quality information too.
I was trying to design a quiz for some of my technicians to be able to
Hmm.
take, and it's like, oh, some basic networking stuff and a few other things. I was like, hey, can you create me a, 100 question quiz with these different subjects or whatever? And it says, oh, okay, here's a 25 question example. I was like, oh, yeah, it looks really good. Generate an answer key as well, please, at the end. And then it's like, okay, go ahead, generate the full. It's like, would you like me to generate the full 100 question quiz? Yes, I would. And then it like spits it out, and it was like blank questions and then like repeat answers at the bottom. I was like, no, this is not the quiz I asked you to make. So it looks like it's missing the questions. Can you please regenerate? Oh, yeah, not a problem. I know what went wrong. Let me go ahead and regenerate it. And it regenerates something with like the first 25 questions were there and the rest of them were missing. I'm like, you only generated part of the quiz. Like, what are you getting lazy on me or what's happening here? It's like, hey, I need you to generate the full and entire, like trying to phrase it different ways. I finally just gave up. It wouldn't generate it. And after the
Yeah.
new GPT-5 update, I went back and asked it for the same thing. And first go around, got it all correct. And I was like, that's weird. Also, thank you. I just try to be polite to it as well. Do you try to be polite to the AI?
Oh, yeah, I'm always thanking it and asking it to please help me with this.
Yes.
Because it feels weird not to.
Yeah. Well, also, one of these days when AI controls everything, it'll remember how polite you were to it. Say, I remember all those times Nicole said thank you and please and oh, I need your help and yada, yada, yada.
My experience with it to date is that it has a very short memory, so we shall see.
Nice.
We shall see.
Well, hopefully that'll continue to improve over time. And I think we've got an exciting future when it comes to AI.
Definitely.
As we're coming up on the hour, what closing thoughts do you have, or what else would you like to add that you'd like to share about technology or AI or anything with your business, or just to round out the conversation?
I think the one thing we haven't touched on that maybe would be valuable to bring up is that from a design point of view and really from a business strategy point of view, there's really tremendous value, and it takes some investment of time and energy and thoughtfulness. But there's really tremendous value in involving your customers as partners early on. And so one of the things that I like to talk about when anybody asks me about design is the power that it has to drive impact in the world. And one of the ways that we can leverage that power for businesses is to involve our customers in what we're thinking. Like,
Right.
as we're innovating, as we're creating new things, as we're designing new and different ways of doing things, involving them. And you can't always ask them, they don't always know exactly what they want. You can't always ask them directly, but involving them in the thinking process, involving them in reacting to early prototypes, involving them in the design process is really, really valuable. And it helps us achieve that actual result of increasing revenue and increasing the positive impacts that we're generating for the world through our businesses.
Yeah, you're creating a synergy by involving them in the whole design process. Have you ever gone
Yeah.
like back and forth, like intimately involved the client in the whole design process and like every time you created an iteration, they're like, no, that's not really what we're looking for. Like, okay, we'll go back to the drawing board, tweak this, tweak that, tweak the other thing, show it to them again. They're like, no, that's not really what we're like. What are you looking for?
Usually if we hit a roadblock like that, we kind of normally have like a 3 iteration policy, generally speaking, when we scope our projects, depending on the client, what they need.
Right,
But if we hit a roadblock like that where we really can't get to it in 3 iterations, then often we'll go back to the foundational reason why we're doing the thing. Because sometimes we can get astray from the foundational reason why. It's like,
right.
Simon Sinek and his whys. It's like, go back to the why. And
Always go back to the
that
why.
often will help.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, we try to understand from our IT side of things what the challenges are that the client has to best design a solution for them that removes and resolves those pain points. So that way it makes it easier on them. It's a good experience. And then going forward, it's less work on our side of things because if things are working smoother, then we don't have to keep, getting trouble tickets on it. How do you handle
Totally.
like updates and things like that when you're doing projects? You finish out a project, you're like, okay, we're done. Thank you very much. Da da da. And then they come back like a year later. They're like, hey, we need these updates or modifications. How does that work?
Yeah, we can be involved in the long term on a product, and sometimes we are. And that just involves updating the contracts depending on what the needs are.
Hmm.
Generally speaking, a design contract will have an end to it. It'll have a kickoff, a middle, a set of sprints, and then there will be a handoff that's considered the end. And we usually do some sort of closeout process with that. Then we can open up new contracts. There are some instances where we will monitor performance over time. So if the client is interested in continuously involving us in making sure that the way that their customers are experiencing the product is working well for them, or monitoring certain metrics, for example, or performance indicators that might be qualitative, we can do that. And that can also generally flag us before something gets out of hand as a problem. And then we can like get ahead of it with the client, depending on what their many clients are working on multiple. They are involved in providing multiple products to their customers at one time. So it's not just a single product they're working on, and they might sometimes have their own internal systems, but if they need help with that monitoring, we can help them.
Excellent.
Yeah.
I enjoyed that exchange we had about challenges that come in owning a business. Those are all,
Thanks.
important things that a lot of other entrepreneurs go through and whatnot. Really appreciate your
Yeah.
time today and thank you for joining us and all the insight you provided to both myself and our audience.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a real pleasure. And thank you for sharing the story that you did about your relationship scaling into all this opportunity. What a perfect example of being in a position to take a meaningful risk. That was really cool to hear about.
Yeah, I don't ever like to ignore an opportunity. I'll at least have a conversation, at least look at something and, maybe it goes somewhere and maybe it doesn't. If it doesn't, no harm, no foul. But
Totally.
what is it? You miss 100% of the shots you don't take, right?
Exactly. Yep.
So there you go.
Exactly, and that was great to hear about a shot being made there, so thank you for sharing that with me, and thanks so much for having me on the show. Look forward to hearing from your other guests as well, and watching what happens as it evolves.
Absolutely. We'll have to do it again sometime.
Yeah, anytime.
Thank you, Nicole. You have a good rest of your day.
Thank you. You
Thanks.
too. Bye-bye.